We're going to get into the first game of the weekend. Well, not the first game of the weekend in total, but the first game of the Rugby Championship from the weekend just gone was the All Black Springboks, which to my mind was kind of the deciding fixture of this abridged Rugby Championship for the World Cup year because, well, they've been the two main contenders for the last.
You're not exactly
years.
sticking your neck.
I'm not
out
sticking my neck out by saying that. But I'm also. It's curious that they played out an epic 16-all draw. Springboks through Jantjies managing to snatch a draw late on and quite deserved because they were dominant for large periods the whole first half. And it was a back and forth battle where defences really were on top. So a lot of it took place in the middle third of the pitch. When there was some loose kicking from the All Blacks. The Springboks brought a lot of intensity, but sometimes they just found it difficult to get around each other or through each other. It was a very much a game of defences.
Yeah, I had sort of, when I was taking sort of live notes on watching the match, I had sort of come to the conclusion that I thought that New Zealand were going to sneak it. Mostly because, as you say, I thought both defences were on top. But I thought once the benches came on in the second half, it really did look like the All Black offence was finding something. Yeah. I thought Dane Coles made a massive impact, Leonard Brown obviously, and they were just, Beauden Barrett was growing into the game. Aaron Smith as well was all massive, and the All Black offence was very much finding something and looked like they were about to put the game away for much of that last 20 minutes and just couldn't quite do so. I mean, they took a couple of 3-pointers, one in particular to go 16-9 up to secure
very questionable call. Yeah. Very questionable call. Also a questionable call is the two that they missed because Beauden Barrett was kicking despite Richie Mwanga being on the pitch. I don't know, you were maybe putting forward that maybe they had like a kicking competition during the week and maybe Bodie won it, so that's why he has the honours, but it always seems like he's being given the nod, and I have always thought he is not the greatest kicker of a ball at all. He's like upper 70th percentile of a place kicker, which is just not good enough.
Where Mwanga is higher than that.
He's just not good enough for a test level, and it cost them here. Those are 6 valuable points that were left out there.
So for large periods anyway, I thought that neither offence got anything off. I thought the All Black offence started to get off enough and probably had got off enough to win the game. But they couldn't quite do it. They didn't find that score, and the Springboks were just hanging in there, defending up to the last moment. I think defending pretty well. And then sticking to their structures, very decent set piece. Everything else, I thought Trevor Nyakanye off the bench was massive. Winning scrums, Francois' low body position, as Squidge would say. Getting a massive steal.
Great, and that was crucial to stop what could have been a game. Like the breaking the back of the game was what the All Blacks were going for in that moment.
Exactly.
And then Francois comes in.
Just staying professional, keeping themselves alive, and then in the very last play of the game, finally something between the Pollard and Leroux axis clicks, and Villy Leroux, in sort of a theme of the weekend, came from the blind side of the ruck, disguised from the ruck, and outside back coming from that angle to take sort of a pullback pass was very much. It was something we saw the Australians do as well, and we saw it in a couple of Pacific Nations games too.
Yeah, seems to be a theme.
And it was a lovely little pullback from Pollard to Villy. Great soft hands from Villy, released Cheslin, and a beautiful assist from the little winger with a well-timed tip, and Herschel Jantjies running that very good Aaron Smith tracking line that he likes to run, and he gathered the ball, and happy days. They stole the game. And as Steve Hansen said in his post-match presser, they can't really complain because how many times have his All Black team done that? Just escaped with a last-minute play.
True. But whatever about complain, there's room for introspection, and that kick for 16-9 will be one thing. But there are a few other things as well. Like they couldn't get around them, but the few times that they did, it was going into the hands of people like Ben Smith.
Both wingers,
and they just in the instance of Rico, he had a shocking day, and his hands were just absent for the first half, and he was played into space around 3 times in the first half.
He had a couple of bad knock-ons, and he also got shut down by Cheslin.
He did. Cheslin made big hits on him a few times.
Most tackles in the whole game.
Which is great. But the other side is where it's of more concern, which is such a rare thing for me to say. Like for anyone who's watched this podcast, I love Ben Smith. I think he is probably one of the best players ever to play the game, bar none. He's such a thinker of the game, a reader of the game. But this season in Super Rugby, and now leading into this, I was thinking watching the Highlanders, he's maybe lost a yard of pace, was my first little thought. And then I saw him make one or two kind of errors under high balls and stuff throughout the season that I would you just never would have seen. and it was a little warning sign for me. And now the fact that he's at 14 for the All Blacks, and those are real concerns, like he is missing that extra bit of pace. He's still, like, in terms of covering the backfield, he never makes like errors in decision making, and he's always in the right place that he should be.
Yeah.
But he's not like Rico or like Cheslin. Like there was a moment in that half where he was played into enough space where if you thought that was in Cheslin's hands, or even go back to 4 years ago, Milner Scudder. Yeah. If that was in his hands, it would have been tried. But what ended up happening was he carried for 10 yards before Quagga Smith managed to get him.
Quagga Smith was faster, just covered the open field,
covered the ground quicker.
Space. Yeah.
That's a real concern, because Ben Smith is like, he is such a fulcrum in that team. It's very hard to say that you'd think I'm thinking of dropping him, but just looking at the performance Bodie had from 15 in terms of doing all of those little bits and pieces that Ben Smith is famous for in this All Black jersey. He covered every chip attacking kick through that was put through. 2-on-1s that were coming his way, he closed them down because he's so fast at it. He makes good reads too, and that just leaves, like, yes, you have an extra bit of security with Ben Smith there, and defensively this All Blacks team are doing very, very little wrong, so it's hard to call things like that out. But some of the space that he was put into in this game, it's very rare that you see an All Black team fail to capitalize.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but to have both All Black wingers just not be able to find the scores that they needed to find was an odd sight for sure. Yeah, and things to ponder in that department. And I think I agree with you. I did like the Bodie Mo'unga axis. I thought they grew into the game. I thought Richie in particular had a bit of a rough start, obviously with the 2 charge downs and just generally not quite being there.
Yeah, he was a bit shook on that from those ones.
Yeah, but that said, it's worth persisting with, and what you get with Bodie at 15 is just with that little bit of pressure valve relieved from him, and you just get to admire him as a player. And then you very,
best players
very quickly realise that
he's
probably the All Blacks' best player and their biggest weapon.
Yeah.
And in this era of attacking kicks as an offensive weapon, he is a great
He shuts them down better than anyone. He covers the space so quickly that it's just not a viable option. Even if you're presented with a picture, you saw it with Argentina last week as well. Like they were persisting with a drop it on the toe kind of tactic, fast, wide, drop it on the toe. And that can work, and it's yielded a lot of tries for the Jaguares in Super Rugby and stuff, but no one covers that space quite like Bowden.
Yep.
And it just means it's a non-starter against this All Black team, because even if you're kind of seeing a picture that looks like there's space there, you're not going to be the first to it. Bowden's going to be first to it, and then he's going to have time to clear or run back and counter.
Yeah.
So it really does eliminate a large portion of attacking kind of options from the opposition. This All Blacks team were very solid in that front. I did think the Springboks had chances to go wide, but a lot of times it was Villy Leroux was the link man that was breaking it down, and it was so close. Like, there was that great little offload from Am out the back to him that he ended up just dinking away, and it was like that was that was an odd little moment where it was 3-on-3 in the wide channel, and Am sort of dragged a couple of men in and flicked it to Villy, and Villy sort of frantically got a very quick hands away to where Mapimpi would have been if he was there, and he would have been in open space. So from Villy's perspective, he might say to Mapimpi, stay on your wing, but Mapimpi had actually run an inside line and was gone, and that ball ended up not quite going into touch, but going away. It was just like illustrative of how, like, Villy is there despite some defensive frailties you would think as a fullback compared to some of the other options they have there, like even in years gone by, the Andres Coetzee types, who were there, who were a bit more robust but a bit less flash. Villy's there to be flash and fast, but to link up with your Faf, take some pressure off Pollard and access the wide channels, where link up with Mapimpi,
find these boys in space,
and Cheslin. And barring that last effort for the try, we didn't see that all game. We actually saw the picture of it going wrong, which we've seen a few times. Like, Villy's not infallible at all. I've seen it in a Wasps jersey, seen it in a Springbok one, where when it doesn't go right for him, there's a lot of wasteful moments where it's like, this is prime attacking possession that's now not. Who knows when we're going to get or see that again.
I think the structure of their team makes a lot of sense. I think the 2 centres are excellent value. I think having
we haven't even touched on that.
No, we will. But I think the 9, 10, 15 distribution axis for the box with solid defensive centres and killers on the wings makes a lot of sense as a structured team. And then the question is going to be, we know who 9 and 10 is, we know who those centres are, who's going to be that distributor from 15? It has been Villy, but it wasn't an infallible performance. What you can say is that they left him on the pitch because they know he can make magic happen, and in the last play of the game he made magic happen. He opened the space with some soft hands and put Cheslin away. He made that try in a lot of ways for Herschel Jantjies to score. But there's others in the wings. There's Gallant.
Gallant is the main kind of pretender to his throne, I would say, because he's a similar kind of player, brings similar options.
Yeah, I would say if nothing else, it might be the worst shout to have Gallant on the bench, to have someone you can bring in for Villy.
Yeah.
Because it's more likely that Villy doesn't show up than Am doesn't show up, and that's at the moment you've a like for like change with Creel and Am.
But it's not quite.
It's not. It's just a downgrade, and it doesn't really change anything up positively for the Boks.
Yeah.
The Bok defense, which we've only briefly touched on, it did set the tone for the game, and Am is the leader of that defense.
Am absolutely smashing. Was it? Who was it? Was
the
it
two centres?
The two of them. But who did he get first? I think it was.
I think he got Goodhue first.
He got Goodhue first, and then he smashed Sonny Bill, and then Sonny Bill was wearing a little bit of scarlet on his nose from that contact for the rest of the game. Sonny Bill himself had a very creditable return to the fold. Like he did keep offering himself.
He'd been playing no rugby
really.
He was up for the fight.
He was up for the fight, but he wasn't quite up at the intensity or just the level that we associate with him. Like there were a few moments where he got caught, thought about getting the offload away, but then didn't, and it was just it was very much a Sonny Bill kind of unsure of himself, but part of it must have been that hit early on was shaping that. It was very much a welcome back to international footy. Here I am now.
For the second year in a row, has just completely shut down at the All Black attack, and he's frightful. Awesome. He's frightfully good as a defender. Awesome. He shoots when he needs to shoot. He's like this really calm, assured figure, and he seems so cool and relaxed, and then he can just strike.
He also pairs very nicely with Delindy. I think their balance is great, to be honest. I think he's exactly what Delindy needs to just do his job. When you can trust that Am's outside you, it means you get the most out of both of them. And I actually do think your point on Creel, despite the fact that Jesse Creel is a great player, has been a stalwart in this Springbok team for quite a while. A lot of time. He is a similar enough player to apart from his tackles just aren't the same. And that was what was telling in the last few minutes when the All Blacks were starting to get a bit more momentum finally in the game. It was because they took Am off after 60 minutes, and Creel was in there.
Took him off after 50 minutes.
50 minutes, and then it just meant the wider channels were suddenly more open because there was no one shutting them down so finally. Whereas Creel was sometimes making similar reads, getting up, getting the hit. But then what you were seeing was that the player hit by Creel was on his feet long enough to get the ball away, and there was no breakdown formed.
And that
play
never happened with him.
Every time ragged on people. He did that to Sam Whitelock.
Yeah, I was going to say
picked him up and threw him on the ground.
One moment was just incredible. He had initially shot out because Sam Whitelock was going to link up with the backs, and he cut that off. So Whitelock decided to take the short line, kind of got into a man, and he just ran back, grabbed Sam Whitelock, and hurled him back towards his own goal line.
Yeah,
and it's
awesome. He's frightfully strong,
freakishly strong. Canio Am, and definitely, I would say at the moment, the premier defender of the 13 channel in the world. And I don't know that it's close.
Can't think of anyone else who's in his league. Like I think Robbie Henshaw does a similar job for Ireland, but from 12.
Yeah, but even so, like a couple of years ago, maybe, but he's not
reached that same level yet. Yeah, no, but in terms of just the marauding nature of the tackles, where it's so quickly wrapping everyone up that there's not even a hint of an offload coming. You're just going down. The new move is snuffed out. Whereas with everyone else, there seems to be a little bit more margin and wiggle room for that. And certainly in Jesse Creel's performance for the last 25-30 minutes of that game, he was making decent reads but not completing the tackle and finishing the play.
There were a few moments where they were being opened up in those channels, and it was because of that 13 channel wasn't being shut down quite like how Am was shutting it down beforehand.
And then comparatively, like what Creel may bring you as far as maybe a little bit more pace and in terms of with ball in hand, it's so marginal that it's marginal. Like it's just a matter of like looking at your stat sheet and going to go, well, he's got a bit better on this front and that. But I'm thinking just offers so much surety that
Am will find tries as well.
He will,
if you keep him in there, he will find tries.
Exactly, and it's like compared to that point you were making about Villy's a bit more of an up and down kind of less steady performer altogether. So if you have someone like Gallant on the bench, you have the capacity to change it up very quickly. Whereas with Creel, you're not actually really changing anything up. The only thing he's there to cover is if Am breaks his arm in contact, and then you have to bring Creel on.
I thought the two subs were a bit weak, to be honest with you. The two backline subs, obviously not Herschel, but the outside backs. they thought that the problem was the two centres, or they elected to take Delindy and Am off, who were their strong points. And it seemed like a losing call, because they had started to lose the 50-50s thereafter. Up until the likes of Francois Lowe and Inyekanye got them back into the game with some big plays. But it was telling that when the move came, it was Pollard and Leroux and Colby,
Cheslin,
as opposed to either of those two centres, Franz Stein and Creel. And I think, if they're honest, that their best, most impactful outside back replacements would be Elton Jantjies, with a mind to maybe moving Pollard to 12.
Go double Jantjies, Herschel,
Elton, and then Killant. And that's a stronger back bench
than what they brought.
They, in terms of their forwards, I thought they stood up really well. I thought nice balance in the back row. Peter Steff got through a load of work. Both flankers did, really.
True.
Paul Smith as well was
Smith was a tackling
very
machine.
busy. Very busy.
He was tackling all day.
And Peter Steff was there for all the scrappy ball moments. Etzebeth had a busy 50 minutes.
He did.
Won his collisions.
Yeah, so did Mustard, to be fair.
Mustard played 80 and he was great.
Yeah. And then Peter Steff came off, or not Peter Steff, Snyman came in for Etzebeth, who obviously had 2 shifts back to back, 2 weeks in a row. Snyman came on, was very physical, marauding, nearly blew the game with a ridiculous hit that could have been the losing of the game off a kickoff to give away the penalty. In terms he was in a fracas just before it. Then the All Blacks kicked 3, and then the next play was him hitting someone in the air.
And
I was just like going, oh.
You didn't like that.
I didn't like that at all. I was like, that's potentially game losing, and it could have been. It could have been a much more of a talking point than it ultimately
He had some big line-out steals.
He did.
I thought he played well.
The best exponent of that skill. And it's because he's so tall. And it's nothing like
dexterous.
He is like, so he's very useful to have jumping up at 2 to pressure kind of shaky lineouts late in the game. He's a good man to have in there, and as you were saying last week, he's a better option for that than Etzebeth, just purely because Etzebeth's too damn heavy and not quite tall or rangy enough to be doing that, whereas like you feel like with some of the underthrows you're seeing in some of these tournaments, Snyman doesn't even need to be lifted, he can just swat them down from 2.
And I thought the Safa scrum, I had mentioned Inyekanye, they were doing okay. I thought, yes, it was sort of like I had predicted in the week running up to it, that the scrum was going to be par for course, except for the odd time Kitsoff gets on top of it, and that was more or less how it panned out. Apart from
the benches were
that's the thing.
Night and day.
It's when Trevor Inyekanye came on at tight head, he just changed the game, and he made a crucial scrum penalty victory after crucial scrum penalty victory. And for a converted loosehead and a guy who has had a shaky history in the Bok jersey, to say the least, he looked mighty impressive. And is going to be giving Rassie some thoughts about Frans Malherbe and exactly how much he brings to the table. And whether his jersey's going to be under pressure. Not to mention Vincent Koch who's in the background as well.
Their depth is something scary. And comparatively, on the other side of that, the All Blacks, those props, like it was Franks, it was Moody. They were solid at scrum time, has to be said. They bar I think one loss, they were solid at scrum time.
Thought Franks was looking slow enough.
They bring very little in the loose, and it's like all they're there to do is shore up the scrum, which is fair, but it's pretty old school, and it's not what you'd associate with the All Blacks at all. And then when they came off, what came off the bench, like they did manage to win one big scrum when it was all the All Black bench against the starting props of South Africa.
Frans Malherbe's last play of the game.
And then immediately Rassie changed them, and then immediately the course of the scrum changed. So it's hard to credit the All Blacks too much with that. They just got one over on quite a fatigued pack at that point. But just looking at throughout the All Black pack, those two props, admittedly now both of their hookers are world class and do some amount of extracurricular work for a hooker, like looking at Cody Taylor's fizzing floated left hand passes out to the wide channels, amazing. And then you have him for 60 minutes, and then in comes Coles, who has to be double marked for the whole game in the wide channels, which is what they were doing. At one point he did his normal little line, there was a 2-on-1, carried into contact, sucked them in, was getting that hand free, and Snyman had to do a desperation kind of wrap him up. It was a great tackle. It was a very necessary one, because you can see the tape that he'd been watching on Dane Coles, being like, he's doing it again. I'll get him. And it's like to have those two options now, that is properly elite. But comparatively, what the props jerseys are bringing, both one.
They have, nobody has grabbed that jersey. Like Tui Nukuafe seemed like the guy
came last year, and now has fallen out of favour a little bit. He did get bullied a little bit in Dublin actually by Tyke Furlong. That's right. Because he's like he came pushing through the ranks of the Super Rugby, but he's not that experienced in terms of there's a lot of other ways of nuance to scrummaging. Like it takes years to build that base.
You have bad days and good days for sure.
But the other point I was going to make on the pack, because I obviously think that their rows are no weakness, but with Brodie gone down now, that brings that into flux a little bit. But the presence of Brodie, Retallick and Whitelock is properly elite, and they have obviously Barrett to come back as well.
Brodie was getting some of those nice line-outs.
He was getting, like, he's another one like that. He's actually so deceptively kind of nimble in the air because he's such a big rangy man, but they can flick him up there.
He's a rugby player. He's good at it all,
and we hope he has a speedy recovery and gets back.
There was a lovely moment where he actually got one over on Cheslin because the All Black wingers like to charge up so much that he did a little dummy pass and delay and then give and opened up some space, and he has those plays in him.
He plays like a 10 sometimes, even though he's 6'9" or whatever. But my point I was going to make in terms of just looking at that whole All Black pack that used to be so formidable, and now they're trying to play more of a forward oriented game, and they're still unsure about their back row. Like Frizzell, I thought played pretty well.
I think that 6 jersey is Frizzell's.
I would think so too, but I just don't know. It feels like next week they may drop him again and bring someone else.
They might rotate, but I think in the big games Frizzell has the 6 jersey.
And then
Fifita's behind him, and he's not.
Matt Todd had a decent game, but by looking at it, like he actually made some decent plays in the loose as well. But I wonder if he's actually like test level 7. Like when you're looking at what the likes of actually Francois Lowe coming off the bench can do for you, or Pocock. The idea
he's not on that level.
He isn't, but he's in the same mould. But he doesn't feel as elite. And then Kieran Reid is the other one who I have to make the point about. Like Kieran Reid has not looked himself since the last World Cup, to my mind. He's playing a different role within that team. What I associated with him at his very, very height of his powers in 2015 was being in those wide channels, like what Dane Coles is doing right now, and just operating as that extra playmaker / forward, so he can drop the shoulder and carry over a winger if it's going, or he can
those silky
get the hands going. But he's playing a lot from one out from the ruck or just pick and jamming, and he does not win those contacts with other forwards. He's quite a slight number 8 by modern standards, and he's not. That's not where he's at his best. It also feels like he has one bad drop in him every game these days. Like there's one random inexplicable drop where his hands are kind of losing him, and I'm just a bit concerned. Him coupled that with the Ben Smith point I was making, and these are two like legends of the game, stalwarts and really fulcrums in that Kiwi team, in that All Black team, and I don't see them as hitting their own standards at all. And that's a concern for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably indicative of just how they want to play the game as well. Like when Kieran Reid was winning Player of the Year nominations, he was performing, as you say, a very different role.
Right, he was afforded that because his partners were Richie McCaw and Jerome Kino, who are two of the most dogged workhorses and physical players
I think
ever.
In the form he's in, Artie Sevilla is going to make a difference. When he comes into that 7 jersey, I think that's your at the moment your starting back row. Frizzell, Sevilla. And Reid, and I think Sevilla's going to make a big impact. He's a playmaker. He's making plays out there all season, and that's exciting. I also think you have to give a shout out to TJ Perinara, who was playing defensively was basically playing 7. I mean, he was every single ruck.
Breakdown,
he was in the breakdown. He was trying to get a jackal. He was slowing up the ball so often, and actually managed to generate a few steals from it. But it was literally every breakdown he was in. He was the first man, and he had to be cleaned out, and it was taking time away from the buck attack, and a real factor in why they weren't able to get anything going, because they so rarely had quick, clean ball. And TJ was
you gotta love TJ.
It was a good defensive role for a scrummy. Why not?
He did get one or two little bits of notions as a result of that. I remember he peeled off the back of a breakdown and decided he was going to perp his way through Quagga Smith and just got smashed and stripped of the ball. And it's like, you're still a halfback. TJ, you may be the toughest halfback in the world, but you're still not going to run through a 7.
No, indeed.
But
that's kind of not great from TJ. But generally speaking, as without the ball, I thought he was class.
Defensively. I mean, he was such a nuisance for that Bok team, and that is part of like we were considering. Like Quagga Smith obviously was at 6, and then they opted for Peter Steff at 7. So that was like before Francois comes off the bench. They don't really have an out and out open side on the pitch, So there are avenues there, especially for someone as unassuming as TJ. Like, you can see the Boks just overlooking the fact that he's anywhere near the ball.
It's just forcing them to maintain a disciplined offensive breakdown, which is something that the Boks can occasionally lose sight of.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just forces them to do it. And on the few occasions that they weren't doing it, he was getting the steals.
Yeah. Very impressive.
A huge factor in how that All Black defense was shutting down a lot of what the Boks were doing.
Yeah, that's one thing I will say for this All Blacks. I've said it before. Like, I've never seen an All Black team as defensively sound as this one. Now, that being said, the caveat to it is they're not scoring tries with anywhere near the same authority as all the All Blacks teams I ever remember from years gone by, but they are very, very robust on defence, and
Retallick plays such a huge role in that.
Yeah.
Everything that happens in the narrow channels gets shut down. He tends to be leading that line. He makes a load of tackles, and it's just extremely physical and up for the fight.
Same to be fair to Whitelock. They partner very well. They're very physical. They're very borderline. Actually, Whitelock is very borderline a lot in terms of he can very often slow break down or slow rucks down by just lingering. And he has that clumsy looking kind of body that it looks vaguely accidental, but it's not.
No,
like, it's clearly very deliberate.
But
there's just wisdom in it. So yeah, I'm concerned for Brodie. He's obviously out for the rest of this tournament anyway, and it's a race against time.
It's a dislocated shoulder. They suspect there was no extra damage, there was no fracture. They suspect that he'll be back.
Perhaps because he's vital.
Oh, totally.
Like, if he's out, then this New Zealand team is.
But I still think anyway that it's ultimately losing if they think that their path to the final is just to bully everybody. Like, there's other teams have ripostes to that second row partnership. The Boks will come at you with your Etzebets and your Snymans and your Mosterts. Ireland will throw a James Ryan and an Ian Henderson and a Dev Toner down your throat.
Yeah.
England will come at you with Itoje and Cruz.
Yeah.
Wales,
maybe a Launchbury in there as well.
Wales will have your Alan Wynne-Jones and his buddy.
whoever his buddy is for the day in question, but it'll be Alan Wynne.
It'll be Alan Wynne-Jones.
Yeah, no, you're dead right in saying that it's not an infallible one, and it just seems to be a bit kind of counterintuitive for what you'd associate with the All Blacks.
The notable things about the game that a lot of people had picked up on, I noticed it instantly as soon as Rassie came in, about the Bok defence, is just how narrow the wingers play. People were calling out Mapimpi for that Goodhue try because he shot it, he bit in, but that was something that they all do. It probably was an error, especially when you consider the way Am read the play. Am shot up narrow and actually had the two men covered and was kind of thinking, if Mapimpi holds his wing here, I might be able to get either of these guys. But Mapimpi came in on the guy on the left, which left the overhand pass there for a very nice try that Bowden Barrett managed to skittle by Am was brave, valiantly trying to cover that space, but Barrett got away.
Catching Bodie in that amount of space.
No, indeed, and he wasn't able to. But I just thought, as a broader point, that was one time that the All Blacks off turnover ball, their only try of the game, did manage to exploit it. But I thought that pass was there to be thrown a few times, and they just. And a recurring theme for the All Blacks, they just aren't throwing that pass like they were 4 years ago.
Their catch pass is not as good as it was 4 years ago.
But they're also just decision-wise, they're just not electing to play in those areas. And there was a theory after the Ireland-New Zealand game last year that they were maybe keeping some stuff in their back pocket, and they were playing narrow to see if they could play narrow, but they were going to bring out the attacking factor when the World Cup came. Like, I'm just still not seeing this.
I find that somewhat unconvincing because the game is at such a level now that you have to practice as you intend to kind of act in the World Cup. There's no room for just we'll just dust off our 4 years ago form and just bring it out when we need it in the World Cup.
The tries that they were scoring 4 years ago were almost muscle memory for a load of times. It was like, this is a familiar picture. It's a 3-on-2 in 15 metres of space. We're just going to score. And there were a few occasions where
this team are far less unrelenting in their scoring as that team was. In all those pictures, you could sense it in the crowd when a loose kick was kicked to the All Blacks, and you just go, oh no, as the fullback comes charging back, and then sure enough it is dotted down under the sticks a phase later, if even more likely off that first phase. And you're seeing much less of that with this team.
And they're not electing to throw that pass that's on when the likes of Mapimpi and Colby shoot in. They're much more comfortable taking it into contact. They want more. I don't know the stats on it, but I'd be shocked if they're not taking way more breakdowns than they used to. And it's a factor.
One of those things.
It's something they're going to have to think on ahead of that Bok game.
For sure.
World Cup.
Yeah, because they're going to run this back. Of course, this is going to be such a curtain raiser for the World Cup, that fixture, and it really is the Boks who have one up on them now. As a result of that, the Boks will be leaving Wellington with their tails very much held high, or their heads held high, and deservedly so. Like, it was a beautiful try to snatch the game, but it was a great first half where they really should have scored more than 6 points. Probably
that back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, probably that decision to take the 3 to go to 6-0 up was maybe regrettable, because they weren't there again for quite a while, and it was like the All Blacks were reeling. It felt like they were going to give.
That's the thing that you can't, like, the commentators had said it live that, like, here's 3 free points under the sticks. But it was just a lack of...
It's my least favourite phrase in rugby, 3 free points. It's not 3 free points. It's 3 points and release all the pressure that you've just been building.
That's what you pay for. You pay for a release of the pressure valve. And while it wasn't as risky as it would have been in times gone by against the All Blacks, where they're going to riposte with an immediate try, what it was just a lack of appreciation that actually it was quite a rare moment in the game to have the opportunity to take maybe a scrum or a line out, 5 out from the All Black line. They got virtually none of them for the whole game, and they had an opportunity there to get it and maybe get a try on the board, and elected instead to take 3 points. And you know, it is what it is.
It's a different game if that happens. That you can't really go 0 and back and saying, oh well, then they would have won the game, because then it would have been 5 points.
You would have known.
You wouldn't have known. It could, like, the All Blacks would have had to respond, so that would have made
it can raise the stakes if you're in that scenario. Like, you can take your solid 6-0, it's a win, we have our early period, and go back to restarting anew. Or you can go for the try, in which case the stakes are high, because if you fail to get the try, it's a massive win for the All Blacks.
True.
As opposed, and not to mention the lack of scoreboard pressure, but if you do win, obviously it's a huge psychological and scoreboard win for you. So it depends on where you want to be. But I think if you want to be winning those games out in New Zealand, maybe that was something they could have gone for.
Well, it's one of those ones. It's those points you make. It's like, to win games, it takes tries, and to get tries, you need to go for them and recognize when you're against an opposition as elite as New Zealand, and they were getting several sequences of play where they were getting things off against them. They were winning contacts. Just recognize that's not going to last for the whole game. New Zealand will grow into the game. They'll have their purple patch. They'll have their chances for tries. Let's take ours.
Interestingly, Rassie had actually said in his post-match presser that he wanted... he was annoyed that they didn't go for the try, not on that occasion, but actually on the occasion that Pollard missed his kick. I recall him being very annoyed when he missed that kick to go 9-0 up.
Yes, yeah.
He had said that maybe that was the time to go in the corner and get a try. He said that in his post-match presser, and was more annoyed then to see the kick sail wide when the boys on the pitch decided that was the way to go about it.
Interesting. Yes, he was very visibly animated. He's a lovely value on the cam, on the old coach cam. Rassie. He's good. He's
does
animated.
Not hide his emotions.
No, he does not.
But he's done a very, very good job with South Africa. A frighteningly good job, and has turned them into one of the top contenders, if not the favourites, for the World Cup from here on out. And I'm already giddy about the prospect of running this one back in September in the World Cup.
Yeah, it's definitely it's advantage. Advantage South Africa, really, for the first time in 4 years more in the context of this rivalry. Yeah, well, in the context of this rivalry, they're in pole position to take the Rugby Championship, such as it is this year, because they do have to go to Buenos Aires, but the
All Blacks could heap the pressure on with a big win over Argentina of Australia in the morning.
Yeah, that's what I said. There's still permutations to go, but it's definitely advantage Springboks, I would say.
I don't know.
I would say that. Yeah.
We'll see. It would be very tame of the All Blacks to not get the bonus point against Australia, which would mean that all the Blacks have to do is win.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what the All Blacks do in that opening game. But then if it comes down to the Boks having to get a bonus point win, bearing in mind that bonus points aren't 4 tries, they're winning by 3 tries.
Yes.
That's actually a tricky enough proposition in Buenos Aires, and a recipe for maybe getting a bit flounder-some and silly and
possible. It's true.
Yeah, loose.
There's still 2 good fixtures to come, but that was definitely my game of the tournament so far.
Oh, totally.
16 all in Wellington. Awesome defensive display from both.
Yeah.
And just nice to see them cancelling each other out and being properly dogged and competitive. Even down to the haka was great, and the response to it, it was a proper old school test.
Tawira just looking upon the haka with contempt.
Yeah.
And a shout out to Herschel as well for 3 tries in 2 weeks.
What a start to his Springbok career. He's grabbed that 21 jersey with both hands, and he's not going to let it go. Yeah, no, he's awesome. It was a great game.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching that video. If it's your first time here, please leave a like and subscribe down below, and yeah, leave a comment as well if you enjoyed it, because we enjoyed the conversation.